Hey everyone, a nerd named Mark here, and I'm trying something new. Obviously, I've reviewed comics in the past on my podcast, a few videos here and there, doing pull lists. But in the most recent episode of a Nerd Named Mark podcast, I went over, all my comic pulls this week, my manga, and I said I pulled a comic that I only pulled it because of everything that was going on social media around it and previews of it. I was like, you know what? I want to read this for myself. I don't buy digital comics or this and that. I always buy physical comics. So I'm like, you know what? It doesn't hurt to just pick this up. It's $3.99, $4, whatever. I know it's money in the pocket, so Marvel's gonna think, oh, it's selling a lot, but I had to read it because I just was I had to see it for myself. And what if Miles Morales was Thor? Now this is number 4 of the What If series for Miles Morales. Apparently, I haven't read any of them. After reading this one and seeing how it ended, I guess there's a fifth one where all the What If Miles have to team up, and I'm like, all right. So right off the bat, this is written by, and I'm gonna try my hardest to enunciate the name, Yehudi Mercado, and the art is from Luigi Zagaria. Now I know Luigi as an artist because he's done most of the Miles Morales and Spider-Man covers. He does, like, I think the new Avengers he's got some artwork coming up for. I think he's a good artist, don't get me wrong, like I really do. It's just there's a lot of issues I have with the artwork in this too, and I'm like, damn. But from Ricardo, anyways, like the writing, it's a lot worse. Now, before I get into the racial side of the racial insensitivity of this issue and everything else, I'm just gonna start off right at the bat. It's just bad writing. Like, I'm not defending this comic at all, and I'm not gonna overhype the offensiveness and this and that. Like, it's just tone deaf, it's insensitive, and Mercado just didn't. This is just poor writing, honestly, even from a what if standpoint, because they basically took stuff that's already happened to an extent in the comics and in the past with Thor, and even the movie. Like, I was like, most of this just seems like the first Thor movie to an extent, and I'm like, so it's not even like really that original story. It's just the fact that they interjected all the characters from Miles Morales Spider-Man and made them various characters from Thor. Right off the bat, this comic starts for the first 2 full panels of just like not actual dialogue, but the inner head dialogue, like a narration style of just a rap song, like a freestyle, and it is bad. It is what you would expect from someone who probably listened to a lot of early 90s and early 2000s rap, because it was a lot of that stuff. Like, and I was like, every time the word dope or bruv, which honestly, like, Thor from a standpoint of literature, it's like old English, like old, like Viking, that type of language, Norse language. Bruv is very more new age, like England, London, because I watch a lot of movies like from England, London, like Europe in general. Like, I love a lot of that stuff, and I know they say bruv a lot. This, anytime it was said in this, felt just weird. But that's not even the way. That's just me. Like, it was like jumbling so many different types of dialect, because other than everything with Miles Morales is talking in this, everyone else dialogue wise is completely fine and normal. It's just for some odd reason Miles Morales is the urban one in the setting, and no one else talks like that, which I just don't understand that, honestly. That it just like, there's a whole thing where Miles, it starts out like, this is a review and kind of like an overview of the comic. So Miles Morales is walking through Asgard. By the way, they say like the worst line, one of the worst lines that I think personally, just from a standpoint of logic, literally it says, of all the 5 realms, Asgard is his hood. Pretty sure there's 9 realms, could be wrong. I mean, there is a debate if there is a 10th realm, but for all intents and purposes, 9 realms. And I was just like, but while he's walking down the city, it's Asgard. Asgard is supposed to be like this grandioso thing, but they made Asgard basically Brooklyn, like sky, like it's basically New York is what Asgard is in this. And there's like graffiti everywhere in this. I'm like, Asgard's supposed to be this high regards, like Odin's son, like Odin is the king of Asgard, the keeper of the peace. This is a place where everyone would go and pay tribute and honor this person who's keeping the peace of the realms. And the graffiti doesn't even look like murals or anything. It's just random stuff. Like, and I'm just like, this looks. It makes it look like Asgard's not that. But yeah, there's in like the Warriors 3, they talk normal, this and that. It's like nothing, like they had their banter, and I'm like, that's fine. Loki is his uncle in this, not his adopted brother. And there's even, I'm not gonna lie, I got a slight pun chuckle out of Loki saying, I wouldn't be much of a god of mischief if I couldn't prowl my way into a room, because I was like, he is Prowler in Miles Morales Spider-Man. So I was like, I found that funny to an extent, like that was a good play on words. I will give credit where credit is due. But there's so many little things that like just all the dialogue, like where Ridley, he's just like, everything from a dialogue standpoint, I have issues with Miles Morales, because he's like, oh, that's what's up, word, let's bounce. And I'm just like constantly just like, these aren't. And the hammer, Milnor having graffiti on it, this is like Loki and this and that, and he literally said hammer time. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, you can't make this up. He says hammer time. Okay, you can't see it because the camera got blurry, so I'll try and put like a screenshot over here. But man, there's just, I don't know. Because the thing that I said that wasn't original is like Loki's like, oh, your dad, it's a big day, your dad's gonna be doing a ceremony naming his heir. And I was like, that sounds familiar. And Loki's like, let's get him a present, let's go to Jotunheim. And I'm like, sounds familiar. Loki and Thor going to Jotunheim. And it's just, you know, they're fighting, and like, it's just, he fights some frost giants, you know, he takes the helmet Alafe and as a present. And so instantly when you see that, you're like, I know where this is going, you know. And the dad, literally, like, the costume design was pretty cool up until you realize he's like just in Tim's. And I'm like, bro, he's got the tan Tim's on, like, and Thor has like Nike, those are like high dunks, aren't they? And I'm like, really? Like, those are not like practical footwear for this, for especially for Jotunheim. You're not gonna go to Jotunheim in fucking Nikes. Like, I don't know. It was, and then obviously Loki has a cask of ancient winters, which obviously brings back Laufey, and they're all fighting, and Thor gets encased in ice, and then you get this dialogue between freaking Loki and Odin about how, you know, you're gonna let your son die. And he's like, well, if he doesn't have the power to do this, maybe he shouldn't be heir to the throne. And, you know, their banter, and I'm like, man, like, and the thing is, if you get rid of a lot of the stuff, like I said, like, Luigi's a good artist. He really is a good artist, but like these subtle things, like freaking the Nikes, the Tim, the graffiti, very like, I don't know, something about it seemed off to me, and I was just like, man, this is just meh. Like, and of course, you know, Thor eats Laufey, and then, you know, Loki's locked away, and, you know, it's just, I don't even want to go over all the dialogue. There's just so much stuff. Like, I will say, at the end, you basically get the what if Captain America, Hulk, and Wolverine from Miles Morales showing up, and literally Wolverine says, but can we come back here because this place looks dope? And I'm like, that's how you're gonna end that? Like, I was like, no one talks like this. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you don't talk like this. Like, I get it. I guess I should probably, you know, address the elephant in the room as to why I partially have issues with this issue, no pun intended. So I talked about it on the podcast. I've talked about it in a few videos here and there. I don't bring it up a lot because I don't think that should have any weight on me as a content creator. I am mixed race. My mom is African American and Native American, and my dad is Italian. So, you know, I've seen both sides of the coin when it comes to this. I have had a lot of racial things said to me in the past, and not really as bad currently, but I've dealt with it. But there, I just don't speak on it much because, like, it's one of those things where it's like I don't revolve my content around anything racial. I don't bring that stuff to the table. I don't really talk about it. I don't, there's plenty of people making content about it. My content is, I just want to talk about comics and manga and anime and video games and tokusatsu and model kits, like, and toys and figure collecting. That's what I want to talk about. But I feel like I'm in the minority, and this is not like a play on words, of I actually enjoyed Miles Morales Spider-Man when it started out. I was never an Ultimate Spider-Man fan. I was always into like Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2099, some Spectacular Spider-Man issues. That was those were my runs. Those were my, like, so I never got into the Ultimate Universe. So I guess I didn't have that attachment to the Ultimate Universe Spider-Man Peter Parker when he died. But I was curious to check out Miles Morales because I was like, oh, interesting. And I didn't like it at first. I didn't care. And then that was around the time Miles Morales Spider-Man was coming out, and I watched Into the Spider-Verse, and I was like, well, I can see some depth to this character. Like, we have a lot of different Spider-Man people, throughout the comic book universes. And so I was like, I'll give it a chance, but I don't want to get into the Ultimate Universe. I'd rather read this Miles Morales Spider-Man, and it just so coincidentally was just starting up around that time frame. So I was like, I'll check it out. It wasn't bad. I think they catered really heavily to a lot of team ups in the beginning. So, like, you had Captain America in a few episodes, Rhino, this and that, and like they had some intriguing stories and character. And I was like, this is not bad. Now we're like 38 issues in. They did their own Clone Saga, obviously, and it's like, yes, a lot of the stories are like rehashed Ultimate Universe stories and Amazing Spider-Man story arcs. Like, there's a lot, like, there's originality there, but they are retelling a lot of stuff that's already happened with Peter Parker Spider-Man, which, it happens. I attribute to the fact that when you have, like, from an Amazing Spider-Man standpoint, there's well over 700 issues of that. There's, the whole Ultimate Universe. There's Spider-Man 2099. There's Spider-Man Noir, which really doesn't get any love, and there should be more of, because that's one of my favorite Spider-Man characters, besides Toei Spider-Man. And I just think Miles Morales just, you're either going to love Miles Morales or you're going to hate Miles Morales. A lot of people just don't give Miles Morales, like, even a whisper of a chance because they're like, they think it's a mantle and tokenization and stuff like that. And I'm like, he is an original character to an extent, like, from the fact that he is Miles Morales, but he's still Spider-Man. But it's not bad. Like, I will say, though, Miles Morales Spider-Man has gone down in quality for writing. It has been getting kind of meh, but that's, I think they're really treating Miles Morales now kind of like Logan was for a while. Remember when, in like what, early 2000s to mid 2000s, when we were getting tons of Wolverine related comics constantly? He was everywhere, and I was even like, I wasn't a Wolverine fan. I was like, I'm tired of Wolverine and everything. This is getting oversaturated. He's basically the Batman of Marvel now. So, but that's kind of that. But yeah, that's my thing. Like, I don't really, but like this issue, this is just poorly written, and I don't know. Like, it's just not anything that I care to, like. It's in the collection now. Obviously, I got the variant cover because I'm a variant cover whore. Like, let's face it, I buy a lot of variant covers. But no, I just think this was just tone deaf, poorly written. And a lot of people online were like, hey, if this should have been written by someone who was of color, a person of color, like black person, like, and I was like, I've seen enough content of comics with black superheroes, black characters that were written perfectly fine by non-black writers. I don't, like, this was just, I don't know. Like I said, someone who listened too much 90s rap and hip hop, too many, like, or just, it's almost like a caricature of what they would see Miles Morales as Thor. Because this doesn't even really take Miles Morales' personality from the comics of his own comic and make him Thor. Like, he doesn't act like Miles Morales in this. So that's why I'm just like, who is this playing? Like, this is someone pretending to be Miles Morales, pretending to be Thor. And I'm just like, that's just, I don't know, man. There's a reason why I've cut back on all my freaking comic book like pulls, and it's because of quality of writing. I will always be the person who, if I want to talk about comics and something that's wrong with them, I'm gonna say it's strictly I will bring up the quality of writing. I do not bring up woke or left leaning, right? I don't bring up any political rate, like any of that stuff. If it's bad writing, I'm gonna tell you it's bad writing and what didn't work. Because the lazy route is to be like, well, this is Miles Morales, this is tokenized Spider-Man. That's why it's bad. It's like, or when, you know, the main thing when, you know, Mighty Thor, when Jane Foster became Thor, I have been a firm defender of that whole entire run, not because it was good writing, but because it was needed to get us to War of the Realms and get us back to Donny Cates Thor and Thor becoming Allfather. Like that, I was like, there's reasonings, okay? But this was just, it's just poor writing. At the end of the day, that's it. It's just not written well. It wasn't even an entertaining comic. And I mean, it's just, I don't know, it just sucks because it's, once again, this is just, these companies need to get better writers, or they need a better vetting system. Like this got approved, this got written, put on a desk or digitally, they looked at it, were like, okay, good, all right, send it next person, and then it got printed. No one once was just like, I don't know how we feel about this. It's not really written that good. But there's a reason why, like I said, I've cut back on pulling comics. I'm pulling tons of manga instead every week, and freaking older trade paperbacks and graphic novels and this and that, because you know, a lot, and I'm pulling a lot more indie comics because the writing is better. Like, I feel like a lot of people are resting on their laurels now because they're like, oh, well, I'm at Marvel now, I'm writing this, like, I'm getting that money. It's like, no, you're not. Technically, they are, because I bought the comic. But if you've read this issue or not, let me know in the comments below what you think. I'm gonna try and do more comic book stuff because in manga related videos. Oh yeah, if I was gonna review this out of 5 stars, dude, it's a 1.5 at best. Just because Luigi does have some good artwork in there. I will give him credit. Zagaria, definitely there's some good artwork in this comic. Some of the writing isn't bad, but man, everything else is just not good. For What If, there's not a lot of originality to this other than Miles Morales being Thor. Other than that, this lacks a lot from a What If standpoint. And I used to dabble in the What If comics back in the day, and they used to be like drastic and creative. Now they're not. So I thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, the red button's below this video. I'm gonna do a lot more videos in the coming weeks and days and stuff like that. I got a busy July, getting married, but other than that, I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.